there are a lot of people, a lot of artists out there, probably 50% of artists out there, only make work for domestic outcomes, and you know, they're the ones that have risen to the top in this new age, because they've got the model down. And I think that as Australia is on an island, and it costs us a lot to get off the island, you know, it also costs us a lot to travel within the island because it's so big. But we're really fortunate in that our Australian government has an arts ministry. Well, it doesn't anymore because the current government got rid of it, but it still has a mechanism of support to allow artists to travel within Australia and to get out. And that's purely my desire to make work that goes out is to make sure that it's for the main reason why all artists create work. It's to share ideas. It's to get it as far and wide as possible, to put it in in front of as many eyeballs as you possibly can. And there's only 23 million of them here in Australia. And out of those 23 million, there's probably only 1.5 million that might even go and see work. And then when you look at the ones that could be bothered to get off the couch to go and see the work, you're looking at around about maybe 300,000 max. And so in order to service all of it, those 300,000 are spread across the whole country. So you need, this may sound crazy, but like, because I used to, one of the jobs I had when I was working at a regional arts company was we would apply for the money to go to travel around the country. And basically if let's say for argument's sake, you wanted to do a 10-week tour of Australia, whatever it would cost your company, double it. And that's how much it costs for travel, accom, and per diems and freight. So it costs a lot. It's a lot of money. But we're really blessed here in Australia in that we have a resource that allows us, because the Australian government used to, and we'll come back to the fact that it is very important to share what city people get to the regional folk, because they're all citizens. Yeah, look, I think that there's obviously many reasons why work that is created in those three countries, Australia, Great Britain, United States, and Canada for that matter, they're all different because of the culture and because of the support and because of the artists. I think that they've all evolved their own ways because of their own predicament. Australia, we punch well above our weight in terms of circus creation and work for young audience creation, contemporary dance in a lot of ways, but also, Europe is obviously smashing the pants off that. And theatre, it's all about Belgium and Amsterdam for theatre. But, I think that a lot of it's got to do with government support and belief. And if you live in a country that has an arts ministry that believes in you and is willing to invest, you're going to see results. Oh. And I think that is why Backbone by Gravity and Other Myths, that was the most supported project that I've ever been a part of. And what it gave us was the opportunity to be in the room as a team together for 8 weeks. Oh. And that's a long time. Like, that is twice usually what most companies spend when they develop a new work. And I think that that's one of the biggest issues in the arts, definitely in Australia, but I'd say worldwide, is works coming out uncooked. And that's why you'll see the difference in quality of work from different countries, because there's a big difference between just getting a work up that's just good enough to take it to Edinburgh versus properly developing a work, bedding it down in a couple of seasons and then taking it to Edinburgh, because that's the Australian way. I mean, there are not all Australian. Of course, there's there's the people that can make it work in a suitcase and just come up with the idea and put it on in Edinburgh. But I think that for the sort of like the top and mid-tier Australian companies, we are fortunate enough to have development funding and to be able to properly realize the work and have a couple of seasons here locally, whether that's touring nationally or just in your own home, and really honing the steel and then taking it to Edinburgh. Because we know that it's a bloody long way away and the stakes are so high, you can't go that far and fail. Because, I mean, you're going to lose your shirt anyway in Edinburgh. So you may as well lose your shirt and win, if you know what I mean. So that's, I believe, why Australia, and I think Canada is very similar in that sense as well, especially Quebecois. There is such support from the Quebec Cultural Ministry and the Canada Council that they are allowing their artists to really thrive, and we're going to start seeing they're going to become a real superpower in the next year or two. Once we're all allowed to see each other's work again, I think that Canada's going to show their stripes. And you know, one of the other things that we were really blessed with, or I keep saying blessed, I'm not a religious man, but I think I should say lucky, because we were lucky. We went through a competitive process and we got it. Was that we've got this fund that is driven by the Australian Festival Network. And we went from an idea, which was just a paragraph and a rough budget, to premiering on the stage in 10 months. And that's unheard of. Normally it takes 3 years to get that. I was referring to Backbone. I didn't mention it. That was Backbone.
Yeah, that's
so we went from paragraph to stage in 10 months. But that was because before we wrote that paragraph, we'd been thinking about it for 6 months. And that was the remote creation that I talked about. We did 6 months of remote creation to do the application. And then we were like, well, we've got this process now. Let's just keep going. And that was how we made Backbone. I think that the reduction in funding that we're seeing here in Australia, I don't think we're going to see the result of that for a couple of years. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, the supply chain is a couple of years long, and so any changes you make in that supply chain, you don't see for a few years, and then all of a sudden you'll either see no shows or a lot of the same shows. Or a lot of the same company. You know, where the funding for children, like youth theatre and like theatre for young audiences, the funding for that particular genre and that pool has just almost swallowed itself. There's almost hardly anything left. Whereas we are regarded as the world leaders in that genre. And so we're not seeing any change to that just yet. But in 5 to 10 years, I think it's going to be inevitable that we're going to lose our position. But it's hard to have that conversation with politicians, because they only see to the next election cycle. They don't see to the next generation. And also it's very hard to have the conversation now when, you know, people can't even eat. We had the touring circuses back at the turn of the century, you know, on the animal circuses. And I think that as a reaction to the animal circuses, as people started to wise up that and sort of not grow a heart, but actually see that, well, hang on, animal circuses aren't really the greatest, because they whip their animals and whatnot. And then there was social circus, which was born out of that. And that was probably in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And that was, there's a couple of companies that came out, which was like New Circus, Rock and Roll. New Circus joined with, what was the name of it? the names escapes me right now. Two circuses merged and became Circus Oz. And then there was Rock and Roll Circus. And they were a lot more sort of raw-edged, no animals, pushing a political point of view. Social circus, like we were talking about social systems. It was very much responding to the injustices of the world through circus. And a lot of Australian larrikinism, I don't know if you know what that word is, but you know, the Australian larrikin is like, oh yeah, you know, like the croc hunter, you know. It's sort of like, you know, the stereotypical massive Australian sort of caricature. And it played to that, this desire to do something new. And I mentioned it before, but a lot of that is Euron Lifshitz from Circa. So he took over Rock and Roll Circus and very quickly changed the brand to Circa. So that was the old Rock and Roll Circus company, and completely changed the aesthetic because, you know, Euron's a theatre director. And so he wanted to bring the theatre back in to this particular form. He was, you know, I can only speak on behalf of him. I'm not him, but I remember having a few conversations with him and talking about how he totally loved the form and he didn't get it, but he just loved it and he needed to know more. And so he brought his theatre brain and kind of, you know, cross-pollinated it with circus. And that is what, you know, evolved into what we refer to as chamber circus, which is that kind of, you know, blank stage, bodies in space, sort of stripped back, black leotards, white floor, you know, very contemporary dance in a way, but not always. Like it's chamber circus. So super high skill level, like the mastery and the artistry is front and center, and there's no artifice. There's nothing to confuse you that these people are superheroes. And so so from that then evolved this I suppose the long tail from chamber circus, which was Circa, and then came your Gravity and Other Myths, your Cassis, and then out of Cassis and that sort of scene came the gender bending Briefs Factory, and you know, they're all incredible circus artists and amazing performers and flamboyant as fuck, and love them to pieces. And they have a very niche form of circus, and they do it very, very well. I think that changes with each project, and each project will have a starting point, and then it will be investigated by each of the performers in that journey. You know, Backbone was all about strength and teamwork and flexibility, whereas Out of Chaos was all about individuality and teamwork in terms of how we work better as a team, but sometimes on some tasks better separate. And it's about that interaction of, you know, having something that works well with a small group, and then one person comes and then it turns to shit. Yeah. And it was about interrogating what that means in everyday life, and also obviously what that means acrobatically is what their language was. So they told the everyday through the acrobatic language. I think that the impact of live streaming is having on live performance is it's not a good one. I mean, it's good and bad. I think that it's good because people can still get their ideas out. I think that it's bad because it's a really bad format for this art form. You know, that's why they've got movie directors and theatre directors, because they're very different. And so we're asking performing artists to turn into film artists. And so there's been a lot of failures. The positive is, like I said, watching a live stream performance just makes you want to go to the theatre in real life, because it makes you understand and love the theatre when you see it live streamed. When I was with Gravity and Other Myths, we experimented with some virtual reality or some 3D, so like 360-degree filming of Circus. And we went a fair way down the road, but we got to this point where it's like, this actually just feels twee. It feels like a gimmick. We're not getting the same experience than what we would if we were in front of them. And that's because of, the raw energy, what you get at a circus show when it's done right. And the audience feels it and are completely overwhelmed, and then they give it back. As soon as you go to a screen, there's no two-way communication anymore. And that's where you lose the potency and you lose the quality. So we just cut that whole project. It was going to be a great project. It looked great on paper. We're talking about like banks of 20 chairs on roller chairs, and everyone on a VR going through a warehouse, and in every room there was a circus act, and they could go into that room and someone would wheel them around. And then so they would give them that sense of moving within the space, and they could look all around, and the circus would happen over and above you. But again, it felt like a gimmick. We did a few tests and it just felt like a gimmick. There's a couple of different structures in which Australian companies operate under. Some of them are very hierarchical, and obviously, the producers and directors are at the top, and then each of the departments work underneath, and it's very, very traditional. And it works for some. There's also the kind of holacracy model, where everyone's on the one plane, everyone can make decisions as long as they are accountable to those decisions. That's similar to the way GOM used to work. I think that they've moved on from that model, but and then there's the co-op, which usually only ever lasts a couple of shows, and then people eat each other. But I think that as long as you have a shared ownership and a shared respect, it doesn't matter what the structure is. If you are there to say something and to make a particular work, you can get the chemistry right and you make magic. You can have everything that should be there, but the chemistry's wrong, and you make a turkey. And so whatever the structure or whatever the organization is, actually doesn't really matter. It's about the people and about the connection and about the mutual respect that you walk into the room with. Well, I'm sure you've made enough shows. If you walk into a room and someone's got an ego, it's like, everyone can see it. Everyone knows it. It's the elephant in the room. And you kind of go, well, we've either got to bloody confront it now or get him out of here. So, if everyone can drop their shit at the door and come into the room on an equal level with mutual respect, with the utmost desire to just do the best job we can do and get a great product, you're going to have fun and you'll probably create a really good work.